On a lonely hill overlooking the quiet woods of Kentucky, there stands a building whose very silhouette has become an icon of American horror. Its windows are hollow, its corridors silent, but its name is whispered in fear around the world. This is Waverly Hills Sanatorium, and for many, it is the most haunted hospital in America.
Approaching Waverly Hills is an experience in itself. The road winds up a steep hill, tree branches twisting overhead like skeletal hands. At the crest, the structure emerges, a massive Gothic-style building of red brick stretching nearly 180 meters with 5 towering stories. In daylight, it looks imposing, a relic of another age. At night, it is something else entirely. Shadows pool in its shattered windows, and the outline of its turrets looms like a fortress built for the dead. Those who visit often describe the same sensation, a heaviness in the chest, a chill that settles into the bones, as if the building knows you are there and does not welcome you.
Yet Waverly Hills was not always a place of fear. In the early 20th century, tuberculosis, known then as the White Plague, was devastating communities across America. There was no cure, no reliable treatment. Families were torn apart as loved ones wasted away. In 1910, the Jefferson County government built a small 2-story hospital on this hill, believing the fresh air and isolation could heal. It was meant to be a place of hope where patients might rest, recover, and return to their lives. But hope quickly gave way to necessity. Tuberculosis spread relentlessly, and the little hospital overflowed. By 1926, a new, massive structure opened, Waverly Hills Sanatorium as we know it today. It was designed to hold hundreds of patients, with long, open-air wards where beds lined the balconies, exposing the sick to fresh air day and night.
From the start, Waverly embodied a strange contradiction. It was a place built to heal, yet it looked more like a fortress. Its vast halls, endless staircases, and towering facade made patients feel small, insignificant against its walls. To some, it was a beacon of progress, modern, efficient, scientific. To others, it was a prison on a hill where the sick were hidden away to die.
Long after the sanatorium closed in 1961, visitors say the atmosphere never left. Walking through the main entrance, they describe a stench of mildew and rust, but also something sharper, something they can't explain. The halls stretch into darkness, lined with broken tiles and rusted gurneys. Pigeons flutter in the rafters, yet many swear the sounds they hear are not birds at all. Soft footsteps echo where no one walks. Doors creak open and shut, though no wind stirs. Even skeptics admit there is something different here. Waverly Hills does not feel abandoned. It feels alive.
Over the years, Waverly gained its infamous reputation. Paranormal investigators, journalists, thrill seekers, all came chasing the stories. They left with shaky hands and wide eyes, describing shadow figures that darted across hallways,
whispers caught on tape, and the sense of being followed by something unseen. But long before the ghost hunters arrived, Waverly was already known for something darker. Tens of thousands of patients were said to have died here during the tuberculosis epidemic. Some historians argue the number is exaggerated, but even conservative estimates reach into the thousands. Each death left a mark, each sorrow a stain. And in Waverly Hills, sorrow does not fade. It lingers.
Today, the building stands as both ruin and legend. Tour groups walk its halls, clutching flashlights, daring each other to step into room 502 or to venture down the infamous body chute. Television specials call it the most haunted hospital in the world. Skeptics call it superstition. But those who stand at the gates, staring up at its looming frame, agree on one thing: the building watches.
In the early 1900s, America faced an invisible enemy, a disease with no cure, no mercy, and no escape. It was called tuberculosis, and in its shadow, Waverly Hills Sanatorium was born. Tuberculosis was known as the White Plague. It attacked the lungs, wasting the body until skin grew pale, lips turned blue, and breath rattled like whispers of death. By the turn of the 20th century, it was one of the leading causes of death in the United States. Families lost fathers, mothers, and children in staggering numbers. In Jefferson County, Kentucky, the epidemic was especially brutal. Crowded neighborhoods and poor sanitation allowed the disease to spread like wildfire. At its height, the county reported thousands of cases a year. Entire families were torn apart. The air itself felt poisoned. There was no cure. Antibiotics would not arrive until the 1940s. In the meantime, doctors believed the only hope lay in isolation, fresh air, and sunlight. Patients were removed from their homes and sent to sanatoriums, remote hospitals built away from the cities where the sick could live apart from the healthy. It was a cruel mercy. Families said goodbye, knowing they might never see their loved ones again.
In 1910, a small wooden hospital was built atop a hill just outside Louisville. It was designed for about 40 patients, nestled among trees where breezes flowed freely. Doctors hoped the hilltop air would bring healing. But hope was quickly overwhelmed. Tuberculosis did not slow. The little hospital filled almost immediately, with more patients begging for admittance than beds could provide. The county knew it needed something far larger, something monumental.
By 1926, the new Waverly Hills Sanatorium opened its doors. Massive, imposing, 5 stories tall, built of brick and steel, designed to hold over 400 patients. It was more than a hospital. It was a city on a hill, complete with its own post office, water treatment plant, and farmland. Everything the patients needed was self-contained. Once inside, they rarely left. To the outside world, Waverly represented hope. To those who entered, It felt like exile. Treatments were strict and often bizarre. Patients were wheeled onto balconies year-round, wrapped in blankets to breathe the healing air, even in winter when snow settled on their beds. Diets were rigid, exercise limited, routines enforced. Some patients improved. Many did not. For them, Waverly was not a place of recovery. It was where they came to die.
Numbers tell part of the story. Thousands admitted, thousands who never left. Death became so common that it shaped the hospital itself. Staff feared the impact on morale if patients constantly saw corpses being carried out. And so, the infamous body chute was created, an underground tunnel where the dead were lowered and removed from sight. The living would never see the endless procession of the lost.
By the 1930s, Waverly Hills was infamous. Families whispered its name with dread. For some, it was a last hope. For others, it was already a sentence. The hill was no longer seen as a place of healing, but of sorrow. Even those who survived often spoke of nightmares that haunted them for years. The sound of coughing in endless dormitories, the wheeze of lungs collapsing, the silence that followed when another bed went empty. Inside Waverly Hills, life was regimented, controlled, and often unbearable. It was a place built for healing, but for many, daily existence felt like waiting for death.
Patients rose at dawn to the ringing of bells. Nurses brought trays of thin porridge or broth, then wheeled patients into the open-air wards. Rain or shine, heat or snow, patients lay in beds lined along wide balconies, breathing the Kentucky air doctors believed could heal. Even in freezing winters, snow would settle on blankets, crusting lips blue. Some coughed blood into handkerchiefs, their breath rattling in the cold. Meals were repetitive: milk, eggs, bland vegetables. Silence filled the dining halls, broken only by the hacking of lungs.
Fresh air and sunlight were prescribed like medicine. Some patients reported mild improvement. Others wasted away despite the regimen. Doctors insisted on strict rest. Patients were discouraged from moving, talking, even laughing. The sanatorium operated on the belief that routine could cure, but for many, it only deepened despair.
Beyond air and food, treatments grew harsher. Balloons were inserted into lungs to force expansion. Ribs were removed to give the lungs more room. Chest cavities were surgically opened. Patients rarely survived. These procedures were experimental, desperate attempts in the fight against tuberculosis. For those strapped to the tables, they were torture disguised as medicine.
Waverly was its own world. Patients rarely saw family. Visits were limited, letters censored. Many entered as teenagers or young adults, never to leave again. Friendships formed between beds, whispered conversations in the dark. But just as quickly, a cough would fade, a bed would empty, and silence would take its place. Survivors described the grief as relentless, like living in a graveyard that never stopped expanding.
Even staff admitted the mood was oppressive. Nurses walked long corridors lined with coughing patients, their footsteps echoing in the gloom. Orderlies whispered of shadows moving where no one stood. The building itself seemed to breathe, a rhythm of drafts and groans, like lungs struggling to inhale.
Inside Waverly Hills, medicine was not always gentle. Desperation led to experiments that blurred the line between healing and horror. With tuberculosis killing thousands, doctors were under pressure to find cures. Antibiotics didn't exist. What remained was trial and error, treatments that were radical, invasive, and often fatal. For many patients, Waverly became not just a hospital, but a testing ground. One common experiment was pneumothorax therapy. Doctors deliberately collapsed a lung, hoping rest would allow it to heal. Tubes were forced into chests, air pumped out, leaving patients gasping. Other times, balloons were inserted into the lungs, inflated to force expansion. Many patients screamed in pain. Some never breathed again. The most extreme surgeries were known as thoracoplasties. Ribs were removed, one by one, to give the lungs more space. The procedure left chests mutilated, bodies broken. Few survived the operations. Those who did often lived in constant agony. Patients whispered about the surgical wards as if they were death traps. They knew those wheeled in rarely returned. Even staff admitted the rooms felt cursed. Orderlies described echoing cries, metallic smells, and the way silence fell after procedures ended. For many, the operating theaters of Waverly were chambers of despair. Other treatments seemed less violent, but were still cruel. Patients were submerged in icy baths for hours, their bodies trembling. Others endured scalding water meant to sweat out disease. Sunlight therapy forced patients into bright lamps that burned their skin raw, all in the name of healing. To outsiders, these methods were considered progress. To patients, they were torture in white coats. Records list thousands subjected to the experiments. Results were mixed, but the suffering was undeniable. Some believe the agony left behind echoes. The screams, the despair, the sense of being trapped under knives and needles. Beneath Waverly Hills lies a tunnel, long, dark, and cold. To the staff, it was practical. To the patients, it was terrifying. Today, it is remembered as the Death Tunnel. Tuberculosis claimed lives daily inside the sanatorium. Patients saw their friends vanish overnight, beds suddenly empty. To shield morale, the hospital created an underground passage, a sloping tunnel leading from the building to the valley below. Officially, it was called the service tunnel. Supplies came in, but more often, the dead went out. When a patient passed away, orderlies wrapped the body, placed it on a gurney, and wheeled it down the tunnel. Step by step, they descended into darkness, away from the eyes of the living. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, made that final journey. Some nights the tunnel echoed with the rattle of wheels long after the doors above were shut. Patients knew what it meant when they heard the sound. Another one of them was gone. Though it was meant to hide death, the tunnel only magnified it. Survivors described the passage as suffocating, its concrete walls slick with damp, the air heavy with rot. Even staff admitted they dreaded the walk. Some refused to go alone, claiming whispers followed them in the dark. Over time, the tunnel earned its name. No one called it the service tunnel anymore. It was the Death Tunnel. Legends grew quickly. Some claimed shadows moved against the walls, keeping peace with the living. Others swore they felt hands, brushed their arms, though no one walked beside them. Explorers today report the same. Flashlights flicker, batteries die, and recordings capture faint voices, pleas for help, moans of pain, or the single word, "Stay." Paranormal teams consider the tunnel the most active part of Waverly Hills. Some refuse to enter after dark.
The Death Tunnel became more than just a passage. It symbolized the true nature of Waverly Hills, a place built for healing but defined by death. Each gurney that rattled down its slope carved another scar into the building's memory, and some believe those scars never healed.
After closure, the massive structure stood abandoned on the hill. Its broken windows stared out like black eyes. Locals avoided it, yet curiosity always wins. Teenagers crept in, daring each other to wander the endless halls. What they found was not just decay. They spoke of footsteps echoing behind them, cold spots freezing their breath, and voices whispering their names. Some swore they saw figures in gowns drifting across hallways, only to vanish when lights shined.
Farmers living near the hill claimed strange lights glowed in the windows at night. They reported cries carried on the wind, low moans that sounded like suffering patients. One farmer insisted he saw a figure standing on the fifth-floor balcony, arms outstretched as if begging for help. But when police checked, the building was locked tight.
Among the earliest ghost stories was that of a nurse. In the 1920s, legend says, a young woman working in room 502 discovered she was pregnant and unmarried, an unforgivable scandal at the time. Overcome with shame, she hanged herself from the ceiling. Decades after the hospital closed, trespassers swore they saw her shadow swaying in the doorway of 502. Others heard sobbing from the empty room. The story spread, cementing Waverly's reputation as a place where tragedy lingered. In the 1970s, explorers found a rusted wheelchair abandoned in a corridor. It became infamous after several witnesses claimed it moved on its own. Some described hearing squeaks as it rolled slowly, though no one touched it. Others said it spun violently in circles, as if an unseen patient still sat within it. The chair remains one of Waverly's most recognizable relics and one of its most feared.
Perhaps most chilling were the reports of children. Visitors heard the sound of small feet running across empty halls. Laughter echoed in the stairwells, though no children were there. One story tells of a ball bouncing across a hallway, rolling out of the shadows towards stunned explorers. No one had brought a ball inside. Locals soon gave this spirit a name: Timmy.
By the 1980s, Waverly Hills had become notorious. Stories of shadows, cries, and figures in white drew ghost hunters and journalists, each left with their own tale of terror. The asylum was no longer just an abandoned hospital. It was alive in rumor, in whispers, in fear, and its reputation only grew. During the 1920s, Waverly Hills was overflowing with patients and staff.
each living under the weight of constant suffering. Among the nurses was a young woman stationed on the 5th floor. Rumors say she carried a secret she could not bear: scandal, pressure, and despair that grew heavier each day. One night, the weight became too much. She was discovered in room 502 under tragic circumstances. The official records are missing, perhaps hidden, perhaps erased. But the story refused to die. From staff to explorers, it passed through whispers, each retelling shaping the legend of room 502.
Visitors describe the air inside as unnaturally heavy. A wave of sadness seems to strike the moment they cross the threshold. Some have broken down in tears without knowing why. Others felt sudden dizziness or an urge to flee, though nothing was there. Paranormal teams report cold spots, unexplained EMF spikes, and faint voices on recorders. One chilling playback caught a woman's voice repeating, "Please, forgive me." Many who step inside claim to see the same thing: a figure near the doorway, outlined in shadow. Witnesses describe it as swaying gently, suspended as though caught between worlds. When lights shine, the shadow dissolves. When darkness returns, so does the image. Guides say even skeptics leave shaken, unable to explain what they saw.
From outside the building, locals have long spoken of room 502's window. At night, a pale face is said to appear, gazing down at the valley. Some claim the figure raises its arms as if reaching for help. Others insist it vanishes when approached. Even in daylight, many visitors refuse to stand near the glass. They say the window seems alive, as if someone is always standing behind it.
Psychics who entered Waverly often point immediately to room 502. They describe a female presence, burdened by sorrow, restless, unable to move on. One said, "She carries her shame with her still. She does not know she has left this life." Whether an actual spirit or simply the residue of untold grief, the energy is undeniable. The room feels stained, marked forever by the moment of tragedy.
Unlike nameless moans or faceless shadows, this story feels painfully human. One woman, one room, one act of despair. That intimacy makes it unforgettable, and that is why room 502 remains the most talked about corner of Waverly Hills. Guides say even seasoned ghost hunters hesitate at its threshold. Some refuse to enter at all. Those who do rarely stay long.
On the upper floors of Waverly Hills, entire sections were once reserved for children suffering from tuberculosis. Beds lined the walls, tiny figures wrapped in blankets, struggling to breathe. Staff tried to bring joy where they could, organizing games, reading stories, even setting up a rooftop playground. But beneath the laughter lingered fear. Many of these children never left.
Long after the sanatorium closed, visitors began reporting strange sounds in the children's ward. Laughter echoing through empty corridors, the patter of small feet running across dusty floors. Tour guides recall moments when guests froze, swearing they heard a ball bouncing in the dark. Others saw toys roll across the floor with no one near. Among these reports, one name is repeated more than any other: Timmy. Investigators claim Timmy is the spirit of a young boy around 6 or 7 years old who died at Waverly Hills. Though no records confirm his existence, countless witnesses insist they have encountered him. Timmy is said to reveal himself through play. Visitors bring balls or toy cars, placing them in the hallway. Cameras record the toys moving, rolling across the floor as though pushed by invisible hands. One of the most famous pieces of footage shows a simple rubber ball. Left at the end of a hallway, it slowly rolls toward the camera. Then it bounces, lightly, once, as if struck. Skeptics argue it could be drafts or uneven flooring, but those who witnessed it in person swear the movement was deliberate, playful. Unlike other spirits of Waverly, which instill dread, Timmy's presence is described as lighter, even innocent. Investigators say they feel a childlike curiosity, flashlights flicking on and off, small touches on their hands, faint giggles in the dark. Yet even these moments carry a haunting sadness, because every laugh, every roll of a ball is a reminder of a life cut short. Timmy may be the most famous, but he is not alone. Some visitors describe groups of children, shadows darting across rooms too quickly to be tricks of light. Others claim to hear singing, soft lullabies echoing through stairwells. One team reported hearing a girl's voice through their recorder. When asked, "What's your name?" the reply came back faint but clear, "Mary." Many believe the children's spirits linger because they never experienced life beyond the hospital walls. Their world was confined to beds, wards, and endless treatments. For them, Waverly Hills was not a prison, it was their whole world. And perhaps, even in death, they remain there still.
Some spirits of Waverly Hills are tragic. Some are playful. But one is different. One is feared above all others. They call it the Creeper. Unlike the nurse of room 502 or the child spirits, the Creeper is not tied to a specific story or life. Instead, it is described as a shadow, thick, black, and crawling. Witnesses say it moves along the walls and ceilings, sliding like smoke given form. Others describe it walking hunched, spider-like, its limbs bending at unnatural angles. And unlike other apparitions, the Creeper does not fade when seen. It follows. The legend emerged in the late 20th century when paranormal groups began exploring Waverly regularly. Investigators reported a suffocating darkness that seemed to gather and grow into a shape. One team described watching it crawl across a ceiling, dropping to the floor, and then advancing toward them. They fled before it reached them. Since then, dozens of visitors have reported similar encounters. Those who see the Creeper often describe not just fear, but dread, an overwhelming sense of doom, as if something terrible is about to happen. Some collapse to their knees, trembling, unable to breathe. Investigators have left the building in tears, refusing to continue their work. One researcher later confessed, "I don't think it was ever human." What is the Creeper? Some believe it is the spirit of a patient so broken by suffering that it lost all human form. Others suggest it is the manifestation of centuries of pain given shape by the building itself. More chilling are those who argue it is not a ghost at all, but something darker, an inhuman entity drawn to Waverly by the suffering within its walls. The Creeper is most often seen in the lower levels, the death tunnel, the basement, and the surgical wards. Explorers claim flashlights flicker as it approaches, batteries draining instantly. One video shows a shadow rising from the floor itself, stretching tall before collapsing into a mass that crawled along the wall. The cameraman dropped the device and ran. The footage ends with static. Unlike playful spirits or mournful figures, the creeper offers no comfort, no story, no humanity. It brings only fear. Those who face it leave convinced they encountered something hostile. Some believe it watches, waiting for weakness. Others think it feeds on fear itself, growing stronger with every scream in the dark.
Stories can be dismissed as rumor. But what happens when the cameras roll and the recorders play back something that should not exist? At Waverly Hills, evidence has piled up, each piece more unsettling than the last. Electronic phenomena, or EVP, became one of the earliest forms of evidence from Waverly. Investigators left recorders in empty rooms only to discover faint voices on playback. Some captured moans, coughing, or single words like help or stay. In one chilling session, when asked, "Who's here?" the reply rasped back, "Sick." Even skeptics admit the voices are human-like, though no one was present when they were recorded. Tourists and ghost hunters alike have taken photos inside the sanatorium, only to find figures appearing later. One of the most famous shows a man in white hospital garb standing at the end of a hallway. No one remembered seeing him. Another photo revealed dozens of pale faces pressed against windows on the upper floors, though the building was empty. Light tricks? Pareidolia? Or proof that Waverly's patients never left? The rusted wheelchair in the corridors has become infamous. Multiple videos show it rolling several feet across the floor, sometimes turning sharply as if guided by unseen hands. One investigator filmed the chair spinning violently in circles. No draft, no incline, just motion where none should exist. In the 2000s, paranormal teams brought thermal cameras into Waverly. The results stunned even hardened skeptics. Cameras captured human-shaped cold spots, dark silhouettes in otherwise warm rooms. One image showed a tall figure standing against a wall. Another displayed a small child-shaped form running across the hallway, though no child was present. Perhaps the most chilling evidence came from a documentary crew in 2006. Filming the third floor, their night vision camera caught a shadow crossing the hallway. It was tall, solid, and clearly outlined. When crew members rushed forward, the hallway was empty. The footage aired on national television, becoming one of the most replayed paranormal clips of all time. What makes Waverly unique is consistency. Across decades, different teams with different equipment recorded the same phenomena. Voices in empty rooms, figures in windows, shadows crossing halls, objects moving without touch. Too many to dismiss, too many to ignore.
Some haunted places fade into obscurity. Waverly Hills did the opposite. Its name spread beyond Kentucky, beyond America, until it became one of the most famous haunted locations in the world. In the 1990s and 2000s, paranormal TV shows exploded in popularity. Waverly Hills became a crown jewel location. Programs like Ghost Hunters, Most Haunted, and Ghost Adventures filmed inside its halls, each capturing unexplained phenomena on camera. Audiences saw investigators run as doors slammed on their own. They watched as shadows crossed hallways, voices whispered into microphones, and thermal images revealed figures standing in the dark. For many viewers, Waverly Hills was their first glimpse into the world of haunted asylums, and it quickly gained a reputation as the most terrifying of them all. Independent filmmakers also turned their cameras on Waverly. Horror films used it as a backdrop, while documentaries framed it as the ultimate case study in paranormal activity. In 2011, a documentary crew recorded what they claimed was the most disturbing evidence yet, a full-bodied apparition captured in the death tunnel. The footage spread online, reigniting debate between believers and skeptics. Even Hollywood took inspiration. Several films used fictional hospitals eerily similar to Waverly. Long corridors, rusted wheelchairs, shadows lurking at the end of halls. By the 2010s, Waverly Hills was no longer just a ruin. It became a destination. The building's owners began offering guided tours by day and paranormal investigations by night. Visitors walked through the body chute, room 502, and the children's ward, clutching flashlights as guides told stories of ghosts and shadows. Some entered as skeptics, only to leave pale and shaken, swearing they had felt a hand brush their arm or heard a voice whisper in the dark. For many thrill-seekers, Waverly Hills became a bucket list experience. Online platforms pushed Waverly into global legend. YouTube filled with urban explorers filming shaky walks through the wards. TikTokers shared clips of toys moving or doors slamming shut. Reddit threads debated evidence, while forums traded personal accounts of terror. Some viewers claimed simply watching the videos brought nightmares. Others insisted they heard voices through their speakers that weren't in the original recordings. The internet turned Waverly into a worldwide icon of horror. Part of Waverly's enduring power is its duality. It is a real place with a tragic medical history, and yet it embodies the imagery of horror fiction. Long corridors, shadows, abandoned wheelchairs, a body chute. It feels cinematic, almost designed to terrify, which is why it thrives in popular culture, both as history and as a legend. Through television, through film, through the endless reach of the internet, Waverly Hills became more than a building. It became a story shared worldwide, a place where history and horror meet, and where the cameras can still not look away.